Okay, hello everyone. Today I thought I would do a little sewing vlog. I haven't been very active on YouTube. I've been very active over on Instagram, and I've just kind of been Instagramming lots of little bits of my process, and so I thought it might be interesting for me just to film it all in one video to watch. So yeah, today I'm hoping to make a jumper with this big round circle detail. I will show you a picture. So this is the kind of jumper I'm hoping to make. So pretty simple, basic boxy shape. I'm going to use just a basic jumper pattern I have for the basic shape, and then I'll make this circle detail, and I think I'm going to do the neck in like the contrasting colour. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to make this cutout pattern and put it on the out of the jumper pattern I've already got. I'll link the pattern I'm using down below. It is a pattern that I make. I'm going to make a slight alteration to the neckline because it has this really nice big fold over neck, and I want something a little bit smaller. And yeah, I couldn't pick which colour I wanted, whether I wanted the aqua circle or the pink, and I put a poll up on Instagram and everyone liked aqua most, so that's what I'm going with. So if you do follow me on Instagram, it's a good way to see what I'm working on before I post it here, and also vote for fun random things like this. So the fabric I'm using is boiled wool, so it's a wool polyester blend. It's kind of like this bubbly texture, and it's a knit base, so it does have a little bit of give, but not a lot, because it has been boiled down. It does kind of scrunch up all together, which is what gives it the boiled look. So it's in this aqua colour and this pink colour, and I've got about a metre of each, which I think should be enough. I'm very hopeful it should be enough. If it's not, then I don't know. I'm making it colour blocked anyway, so if I have to put like a strip of blue on the arm or something just to make it work, I will. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with these two colours. The reason I'm doing this design is because I love both of these colours and I couldn't pick just one to make a jumper of. So I thought, why not use both of them together? And yeah, this fabric is from Darn Cheap Fabrics. Again, I will link that down below. So yeah, let's get started. Alright, so I've got my pattern pieces. I've got the neck piece, which I'm going to actually fold in half when I cut, so it's only going to be that wide. I've got the sleeve piece, which is fine as is, the back piece, and then the front piece. So this is where I'm going to add the circle. So these pieces that I'm not really changing, I'm just going to leave as is. I don't need to do anything with them. But this one, I'm going to trace out the shape and then mark where I want the circle to be. I want it to be pretty centered. So I'm going to trace that out now and show you me tracing that out. I do apologise if I kind of go in front of the camera. It's a new setup, so I'm getting used to it. Alright, so that is traced out. I don't know how well you can see it, but I did actually lengthen the jumper a little bit. So this jumper pattern I'm using, called the Whitney jumper, it is a crop jumper, so where it usually sits is right at my waist, and I want it to just be a little bit longer. So there's a little bit of extra length on there, and I'll add that extra length on the back as well. So I copied everything, grain line, neck, armhole, all of that. And this pattern does have the seam allowance already on it. So when I add the circle, I don't want to be adding into where the seam allowance is. So what I'm going to do is just draw the seam allowance on these edges, just to make sure I don't clip into where those areas are. Alright, so I just added it along the side seam and the armhole because I'm probably not going to be going up that high. Next thing, I need to work out how big I want the circle to be. I do want it to be quite large on the front of the shape. I probably want it to be pretty centered as well. So what I'm going to do is measure kind of across and see how big it can get before like getting out of bounds. So like that's at 15 centimeters, which means it would be a 30 centimeter diameter. So it would be that big, which is quite big. That's quite broad. So I think 15 would work. if I hold that here, so 30 would sit from like there to there, which is about what I was after. So that'll finish at my waist and then sit, looks like about 5 centimeters or about 4 centimeters below the neck, but that's not including the ribbing band. So I think that's what I'll go for. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark that 30 centimeters and then mark halfway, so at 15, and then I'm going to go around and pivot. So I'll do one at a right angle, so 15 centimeters, and then I'm just going to go around and keep doing little 15 centimeter increments until I have enough that I can comfortably join that into a circle. The ruler I'm using as well is a grading ruler, so it's got all these lines. So it's got bolder lines at 1 centimeter and then fainter lines at half a centimeter. If you want to be working with patterns, this is a great ruler to have, because it's really easy to add seam allowance, take seam allowance away, and do measurements like this, because it's got all your right angles there for you. It's also got the 45-degree. Yeah, you can get these from most kind of design shops, places like MREC have them, or even online. I'm confident somewhere like Amazon or something would probably have one. I love this ruler a lot. So I'm going to go around and mark 15 centimeters all around there. Alright, again, I hope you can see that. If not, there's like little marks all the way around at 15 centimeters away from this central point. So I'm going to go and connect them together. I'm just going to do that by eye. I find, unless you're going to have a compass or like a circle already this big, which you could like print off a circle or something, and just trace that, but otherwise by eye is usually good enough. Alright, so that's half the circle, and I'm also going to write here to remind myself that this edge is on the fold. What I'm also going to do is copy this grain line that was on the original piece onto the body piece, because it's no longer showing up on there. And the grain line is just straight up and down following this straight edge. So I'm just using this ruler along that grain line to draw the new one. And then I'm going to label the pieces, so I'll call it like circle, jumper, body, and I need to cut one on the fold. Now what I've got to do is add seam allowance and trace these off. So what I'm going to do is trace off this circle first and then add 1 centimeter seam allowance. I like 1 centimeter, that's just what I like to work with. You can add as much or as little as you like. I find 1 centimeter is enough that I can work with without it like getting too small, but it's also not super big, and then I end up cutting away heaps of seam allowance. Right, I'm going to cut this piece out. So pretty much I've traced out that circle, added seam allowance to the curved edge but not to the straight edge because that's going to be on the fold, and then cut it out. So that piece is ready to go. And now I'm just going to add the seam allowance onto this original piece where we traced the circle shape. So this time I'll be adding it onto the inside of the circle. Right, so seam allowance has been added. I'm now going to cut this piece out. Alright, so that is what the front piece is looking like. And then we've got that circle piece which is going to fit in there. There's no need to kind of mark top and bottom or anything on this because it is a circle, so it should be the same. That's all good. What you can do if you find sewing curves is a bit tricky is you can make some like matching notches. So you can put a notch here on this piece and here on that piece so that you know you're not stretching it or anything. I'm not going to do that because I feel pretty comfortable sewing curves, but if curves are you're new to, that's definitely a good idea. So now I've got the front pieces, I've got back, the sleeve and the neck. I'm going to cut these out. I'm going to start with the pink because that has the most pieces to be cut out of it, and just in case I can't fit a piece and I'd like to know maybe where I'd want to place it on the Aqua instead. So the pieces I'm going to be cutting out of the pink are the sleeve, the back and the front. So what I'm going to do is just lay it out and make sure it all fits. So they will fit there. And this. Perfect. So that should all fit in. So I've just straightened up that fold a bit, so you can kind of, you probably won't be able to see it on camera, but in person there are little, on a knit there's like a little V's, rows of V's, and I've just tried to make sure they're all sitting straight. Often when fabrics are knitted, they're knitted in the round and then they cut down one side, and if that side isn't cut perfectly straight, which this one hasn't been, then there's no point matching up the selvages to work out where the grain line is. So doing it this way means I can visibly see that it's on grain along that fold. So I've got my sleeve pieces cut out, the front piece, which looks like this currently, got the big hole in the center, and then the back piece, pretty standard back piece. So that is everything out of the pink all done. Now I'm going to cut out the aqua. Alright, so with the aqua, because these pieces aren't very big, and they're both cut on the fold, what I'm going to do is only fold the fabric over as much as I need to cut out. And so for the neck piece, I'm just going to fold it in half. And that means when the neck's actually on, it's only going to be half of that height. So that's the neck piece done, and the circle for the front. Alright, so I've got my pieces. First thing I'm going to do is sew down this edge. I kind of like to batch sew everything, so usually when I'm sewing I put together all the pieces that need to be overlocked with the same colour, everything that needs to be machine stitched, straight stitched with the same colour, in sort of piles. So this, I'm just going to machine stitch down this edge, so that will be that one. The sleeves need to be hemmed, so I will take those to the cover stitch, put that in a separate pile, and then I'm going to work on this front. So what we need to do is join these two together. The hard thing with joining curves like this is that this edge is a lot bigger than this inside edge, but where they would meet up and when you actually sew at that 1 centimeter mark, they should be the same size. So what I'm going to do for this one is I'm going to go around and carefully put in like a million pins to hold it into place, make sure it's not being stretched or pulled in any sort of place. You can hand base this if you're not as confident, or if you enjoy hand basting. I don't enjoy hand basting, so I'm not going to do that. It would be probably the better thing to do. You can also use one of these glue pens. I really love these when I'm sewing either tricky things or fabrics that can't be pinned, or trims that are really hard to pin or place. It's just a wash away glue pen, so it just comes out in the wash, but it does hold things in place really, really well. I use this all the time, especially when sewing knitted fabrics, because I do find it stops them stretching out too much. But for this, I'm just going to pin this in place, and then I'm going to machine stitch it on. So even though this is a knit, I know that this jumper pattern doesn't stretch a lot when it goes on me. This is enough that it doesn't need to. It's wide enough to come over me without stretching heaps. If you're making something that was tight to the body in a fabric that was super stretchy, this also, while it has give, isn't super stretchy. I would suggest either zigzag stitching it or overlocking it so that it can still stretch and move when you put it on. But I'm just going to machine stitch it. I might, depending on how I feel, overlock these. I might leave them raw. The good thing with boiled wool is you can leave the edges raw, it doesn't fray. So yeah, I'm going to pin these in place. I've got to make sure, yeah, so that's the wrong side and that's the wrong side. So I'm going to go around with right sides together and pin that in place. What I'm probably going to do is lay this over the top evenly so I can feel where that inside edge is and it's pretty even. And then I'm just going to probably pick a couple of points, pin those first, and then work all the other pins in. I'm also putting all the pins on the inside. I find that will be easier for me to sew than on the outside, but it really doesn't matter too much. Whatever you're more comfortable sewing, whichever side you're more comfortable sewing with. Alright, so that has all been pinned in. So that's what it looks like from the right side. I'm really happy with how this is looking. So I'll put that in the pile to be machine stitched. Take these over to machine and get them sorted. So this has been sewn together. That's what the inside looks like. So now I'm just going to press it because I don't know if you can tell, but it is kind of like bubbling a bit. So I'm probably going to press it so that the seam is flat and open. I think that's going to give the best look. Because this circle is being folded in to a small area, you can probably hopefully see on camera that that sort of bubbles up a bit. Because it's wool, I'm hoping that will be able to kind of shrink down with a little bit of the heat from the iron. And same with this one, it's being pressed out into a larger area. I'm hoping that should be able to stretch out a little bit to meet it, so that I can get that smooth and flat look. First thing I'm going to do though, before hitting this with any heat, is test a little bit of scrap. So I'm going to put my iron down to a wool setting just to make sure it doesn't burn it or melt it, especially because this is a wool polyester blend. Polyester can melt. Alright, so that has been ironed. It's not perfect. I probably could have taken the heat up a little bit more on the iron. I just am cautious because there's polyester in this, but it's looking really nice from the front, and that's the main thing. If you wanted to, you could definitely either overlock these seams together, overlock them individually, especially if you're using a fabric that will fray. Luckily this one won't, being boiled wool. I could also top stitch this down both edges if you want it to really stay in place. I'm not too concerned with that. I'll see how I go wearing it. If I find after wearing it it's annoying me that this can kind of flap about, then I'll either top stitch down or even do like a little blind kind of stitch so that it stays down, but I don't think it's going to annoy me that much. So now what I'm going to do is overlock the shoulder seams together. So with, oh, kick to the camera. So with this one right side up, I will grab the back piece. So back piece with right side facing down, and then I'm just going to overlock both of these two shoulder pieces. Keep in mind the seam allowance on this is 1 centimeter. Most overlockers sew about 0.6, so I'm going to cut a little bit off while I'm sewing. So I'm going to take that to the overlocker and do that now. Alright, so those two shoulder seams have been stitched together. Now what I'm going to do is attach the neck. So I'm going to fold this in half and find the halfway point on the back and the front. So it looks like that. And then with the neck piece, I'm going to do the same. So the back's going to be where that seam was sewn. And then this bit where it's folded is going to be the front. And then what I'm going to do is fold this in half. Like that, and with the right side facing the right side of the jumper, I'm going to match that back. And then what I'm going to do is, because this neckline isn't like super stretched on, it's not like a t-shirt rib or something, it fits pretty well, is I'm just going to match up where the shoulder seam is, just kind of by pulling it straight so that it all lines up. Same with the other side. And when I'm doing this, I'm pushing the seam allowance of the shoulders towards the back. It's just going to have a bit of a neater finish. So it should be pinned on like that. So when it will be folded up, it will look like that. So I'm going to go ahead and overlock that and do the same thing that I did with this. Because this seam is 1 centimeter, I'm going to cut a little bit extra off. Hopefully you can hear me over the overlocker winding down, but that is the neckline on. I'll go over and press that down a bit as well, just so that it sits nice and flat. And then I'm going to go to the cover stitch and do the sleeve hems and then insert the sleeves into this. Alright, so I cover stitched the hems of the sleeve pieces. If you don't have a cover stitch machine, totally normal. I know it is a pretty intense machine to have. You can use a twin needle or a zigzag stitch, just something so that these still have a little bit of stretch. This pattern does have, like, these cuffs are big enough that I wear them without it stretching, so it wouldn't be the end of the world if you do it with a straight stitch. The only thing with doing that on knits, especially if it is a stretchier knit than this boiled wool, is you could snap the stitches, whereas the cover stitch, twin needle or zigzag will stretch with it. So I'm going to attach these to the main body. While I was at the cover stitch, I also did the hem of the back and the front of the jumper. The reason I did that was because I've only got 4 spools of the colour thread and I really didn't want to have to overlock, swap it onto my overlocker again and then swap it back onto my cover stitch. So I usually do this all in one go, just so it looks a little bit neater at the edges, but it should still be fine to match up at the edges. So what I'm going to do is take this piece, so that's the back, that's the front. So I'm going to find the back notch on the sleeve piece and pop that on the back side. Alright, sorry I got interrupted. So matching that back notch to the back piece, lining that up, and then there is also a notch for the shoulder seam. So I'll match that up, again making sure the seam allowance for that shoulder is going towards the back. And then match that front edge up. And the sleeve does need to be eased in just a little bit. It's not even really that much of a noticeable amount of ease. Alright, so we're going to overlock that sleeve edge together. Once that's done, I'm then going to fold it in half with the right sides together, like that, and then stitch up from the hem all the way to the sleeve hem. So do that on the overlocker as well, and then I will be done. So I'm going to go and do that. Alright, so that is all done. I sewed up the side seams. I'm really happy with how this turned out. I'll put some footage in now of me wearing it. So yeah, I already knew this pattern fit me really well. It's a pattern I make, so it was made for my size anyway, but I've made it up a million times. And yeah, I'm really happy with how this circle came out. It looks really nice and crisp. It's not too wobbly. Yeah, I'm very, very pleased with this. I hope you enjoyed this little kind of sew along. Sort of trying to find a balance between not being too tutorial-y, because that's a lot more effort for me to video and I don't have a lot of time, but still giving some kind of tips and showing you how I put things together. If you've got any questions, always feel free to leave a comment, or even better if you go to my Instagram, because I'm on there way more often. Yeah, so follow me on Instagram. If you want to get this pattern, I will link it down below. I'll link where I got the fabric from and anything else I can remember. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, follow me on Instagram, all that good stuff. And yeah,